Welcome to another episode of Wally Ho's Garage. In this episode, we're going to go through and change out the suspension in my BMW 335XI 2008. We're going to take out the springs from the rear and take out the springs from the front, replace the McPherson struts in the front, replace the shock absorbers in the back. We're going to change them to Bilstein B6s. So they don't actually change the ride height per se, and you don't really want to do that with your XI car. But they will improve the handling. The car is roughly 14 years old, and I've replaced almost every other part in the car. This is actually a little bit difficult, and you need to have some good tools for this. And also, the springs are very powerful, so watch out in terms of it coming apart. So yeah, with that, stay tuned. All right, so one of the things that we did is we purchased this socket. As you see, it takes a 7mm hex key here, right? And it's fed in this way, and then you turn this, right? In order to turn the nut on the McPherson strut, right? Essentially the top hat here, and this goes in here. But what goes in there is this Allen key, right? To keep from turning as you turn the nut. The nut has to be done to 54 foot-pound. Well, as you saw in the previous clip, when you turn this, it hits the Allen key, right? So it's really annoying to turn this enough, and there's quite a lot of pressure, and this spring is actually quite compressed. So this particular socket wasn't good enough. So then we went and purchased this kit, the Schwabin strut and shock absorber kit. This is really interesting. So it comes in a kit with a bunch of sockets and Allen keys. So we need the 21 socket, but what's cool about that, it's see-through. And by doing that, you can take a 7mm Allen key, put it right to the center to hold the shock or your strut. And they have this, which has a hole in it, allowing you to turn while you hold the center of the strut from turning with this Allen key. So you do that, and so that's good. Allows us to take up the slack fairly quickly. But the problem is now you have to torque it to 54.6, I think, foot-pound. And the problem with that is your torque wrench has no way of fitting onto this. So here's our CDI. It's a division of Snap-on, actually. It's a pretty pricey torque wrench, but they're really awesome. Get digital so you don't have to worry about undoing the spring to keep the torque value correct. These are basically self-calibrated because they're basically, it's a stress sensor is what it is. So with this, there's no way to attach it. Now you can think of a crow's foot, which goes on here, and it's like a little wrench that comes out, and we can then clip it around this bolt here, which is roughly 21 millimeters, right? So we have one of those on order for future, but we need to get this job done today. So how do we do that? Well, the annoying part of using this socket was the fact that it kept bumping into the Allen key. But at the end of the travel, if we put this on here, it's just 2 or 3 more tugs and use the Allen key, it doesn't get in the way. So we're going to use this to torque it up to 54.6 foot-pound of torque, and then we should be good. So anyway, that's what we'll do. And we'll tie this one up, and then we install it back in the car. So you can do this yourself, but you better get some tools. And as we saw, I thought the auction socket would work, but it doesn't, it's too thick. I thought that socket would work, but it's really annoying because of the cut. And then I finally bought this kit from Schwabin, from ECS Tuning, and it's roughly only like $89. So yeah, you could also, buy the tools, use them, and then sell them again if you want. I keep my tools because I have a big collection here. So anyway, we've used the jack to jack up the back of the car. We used our 15mm socket to take out the nut that holds the bottom of the strut right here. Get a better view of this. All right, so we've used a 15mm socket to take out the nut, this one here, that's holding the bottom of the shock into the rubber mount. The rubber mount itself is, I think it's a T10 Torx, so we're going to remove that next. Using this kit right here, and we'll replace the 2 screws, which are like right here. Okay. All right, so I've taken the 21-inch wrench, we put it onto the nut, this nut, and then we use the impact here to drive that nut out. And that nut and the bolt holds the arm that has the spring in it. So we just remove that. That's what we just did here. And we have the nut right here. Okay, so we'll replace that. Well, once we remove the spring. Okay, and there's the bolt. We just pulled it out. It's pretty clean. Okay, and so here's the shock. We just pushed down a little bit and pulled it out. Here's the bottom. All the bolts removed. We can push down on the arm here and release that spring. Push down, you see the spring comes out. So that's what we're going to do because we've taken the bolt off on the bottom there. Right, so we'll take the spring out and put this new one in. So there's the new spring. You put the rubber cap on top, and you put it inside the little holder there. And then we put this new, see the rubber? That's the bump stop essentially for the shock, which goes up there. So it's a combination of that spring and the shock to dampen the vibrations. So I'm replacing the spring and also the shock. So I'm gonna put these bolts in down here. They're those stars. I think the torque's 10. And yeah, then we'll put this arm back in and be good to go. Alrighty, so this is the back of the vehicle, and that's the shock absorber that I'm going to take out, and we'll replace with a Bilstein one. So I'm going to go in the trunk and take out the very top, the 16mm nut. What you see here is the new spring. It's not quite in yet. We just tried to test fit it. This is the old spring that we pulled out, and in order to get that out, you have to undo this 21mm bolt. It's quite beefy, as you can see. So clearly, use an impact. So yeah, this is what the back end of your car rides on. So once you take that out, you have to have a jack underneath it because it actually will spring down because of the spring that's pushing on that arm. So you have to use a jack to jack it back in order to put the bolt in. So yeah, don't be afraid of that loud noise. It's no big deal. So yeah, once you move that out, you can then take the bottom control and pry it down to get enough room to pull the spring out. Once you get the spring out, you have to get the shock absorber out, and the shock absorber has 2 torque screws that hold it to this big rubber bushing. We're replacing the bushing as well. So once that comes out in the bottom, you'll take out the screw at the top and the whole shock absorber will come out, replace the spring, replace the shock absorber, put it all back together. So not too bad. So we'll do this for both sides. And then the front is the McPherson struts, which we have to take out, and we'll have to use our spring compressor to compress the springs to get off the top of the hat. That we did not buy because we can reuse it in our new setup. We bought new springs for the front because I believe the springs are 14 years old now, and they may be a little bit soft. So that's why we're replacing them with basically OEM ones. So we're not lowering the car in any way. We're just making sure the springs are nice and stiff. So it restores it back to the original handling of this car, roughly when I bought it 14 years ago. All right, so this is with the liner removed. There's like a pin up there that you pull out. One up here you pull out. There's a Torx 40 to get rid of that connector there. And then you got to remove the back piece here, and then it comes out. And then when that's removed, you can then pull the whole thing out. Interesting, some wires here. This one here is not even connected. It's like it's part of the MOS system. I don't know what that is, but we'll figure it out. Right, so what we need to do here is we want to remove the shock absorber. So removing this, there's the bolt right there. And we'll just get in there with a ratchet and take it out. And that should drop the shock absorber. But you have to get inside the trunk to do so. You'll do it on the other side as well over there. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and do that. And that's our new Bilstein shock. That's the bushing at the bottom with the 2 Torx bolts and the center pin. And that's going to go thread back up through that hole up there. And as you can see, that's what the hole looks like with the screw removed. So this should drop out. All right, so now it's all done. There's that new rubber block. There's the new spring. you have to use a jack in order to lift this up. Otherwise you can't get this bolt, this one down here, you can see it right there, in. It doesn't align correctly with the knuckle. So it's a bit of work, but there it is. That's the Bilstein shock. All right, so we use our new strut kit that we bought. It comes with actually, you know, obviously the right sockets with a hole through it. But this is really interesting. At the top of the back strut, there's like a hex head. You have to hold that from turning while you turn the rest of the nuts. But yeah, the hole through unit has this head. You can see it. It's kind of like a slot, but it fits the hex head. Oops, here. Do you see that hex head? So you got to hold that from spinning while you turn the nut around it. So this strut and shock kit is amazing because it has got that. And we drop this into the top after we put this in. So now we're able to turn the nut without it spinning. Yeah, so there we go. So well worth the $89 that strut kit was costing. The other socket I bought was just for the strut, and that was, I just saw, was kind of annoying to use. It's only $89. I recommend you get this tool for the front and the back. It works fantastic. Right, here's our smaller CompuTorque, the 3/8" one with a crow's foot that goes in there. Oops. And then we torque. Yeah, so we'll torque, but we have to have that Allen key in there. And then we should get a tone, and that means it's actually perfect. It's 19 foot-pounds. All right, and that's how you do the inside of the vehicle. But what you have to do is you have to jack it up to make sure there's enough pressure on the suspension assembly for that to be tightened correctly. All right, and now it's fully installed, torqued at the top. New Bilstein, new springs. That may not be sitting correctly there. And then we want to torque everything down here too. And there's the new spring for the rear wheel. So let's go to the front. Right, so we removed the, you can see it. That's that bolt right there. That's the pinch bolt to the knuckle, which holds in this McPherson strut here, which you're going to remove the whole thing. The strut is clamped by that bolt, and we have this little tool. It's like an oval, and it's a 1/2 inch. You put it into the gap and you twist it, and that'll open the knuckle. It'll open the knuckle up enough for the strut to fall out, and the knuckle should then come down. We should be able to take this strut out. Should be fairly straightforward. So the next thing we have to do, 18mm wrench, impact gun. Grab the pinch bolt. It's an 18mm. Put the wrench there, take the impact, and spin it off. So there's the nut. Here's the pinch bolt. Kind of rusty. We'll have to I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. So now the knuckle is free, so we have to have a jack underneath it to keep from falling. And then we take this thing, our tool from before, which is this oval, and it will use it to spread the knuckle from behind. All right, but we have to first remove the sway bar here, and I think this clamp, and that's it. On this side, it's actually easy. On the driver's side, it's a lot harder. There's more stuff you have to remove, including, I think, the wear sensor and the ABS sensor. The wear sensor for the brake, I think it's only on one side, the driver's side, and then the ABS sensor is this one here, but it comes off with the pinch bolt coming out here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but right there is that oval spreader. We've spread the knuckle, and you see it, this drop of like 1 inch. This whole thing is sitting on top of a jack down here, so we're letting it down. What we got here is we have the tool back here that spread the knuckle, and also the knuckle is dropped about 1 inch. What we're doing is we have it on a jack, and we're slowly dropping the knuckle, the brake, and all the other components from the McPherson strut so we can get the strut out. A lot of people are removing the top, take it down here, and they pivot it out, but it usually nicks the top of the rim here with the screws. So we're gonna do a little bit differently. We're gonna drop the knuckle so this comes free, and then we can drop the entire strut out and take it out. So let me just drop the jack a little bit more. You notice how it's coming free? Okay, so we had to use the jack to catch it, but now the McPherson strut is free. We're gonna grab the tool here. So with that said, we'll take the 3 bolts in the top out, and this thing will drop out, and we'll pull out of the knuckle and replace the spring and the McPherson strut and put it back in. So the strut is now dropped out, the pinch bolt. So the knuckle. So we use this, we spread it, and we hit it with a hammer. Well, this hammer right there, and it popped it out. It's being held up by a jack to make sure that this is actually quite heavy. So just FYI. So yeah, so now that's free. We're gonna undo the 3 bolts up there and drop the spread out. And then we come above and we undo these 3 bolts. We might want to remove this stress bar here because it gets in the way of getting that bolt, but I think I can get away with it without having to remove this. But if you don't remove this, you don't have to remove it over there. You just gotta take this and you gotta pull it out of the way. You gotta swing it out of the way and then get to the 3 bolts and swing it back. The most important thing is when we put the hat in, there's a pin here for orienting. The alignment shop pulled that pin out, unfortunately for me, for the last hat. So these new hats will have a pin that goes in there so you know exactly how to orient it, and that gets the correct camber. All right, so once these 3 bolts come out, the McPherson strut underneath will drop out. There's a strut out of the knuckle. You gotta be careful, make sure the whole knuckle is supported because it might pull out your drive shaft, so just be very careful with that. So now this whole thing can drop out. So now you can see, get close here, that there's the McPherson strut hanging. It's out of the knuckle, supported on the jack, and it's held by 1 screw right now. So we'll remove that screw and we'll drop the McPherson strut and take it out. And that's what it looks like when the thing is removed. And over here is the McPherson strut. We're gonna put the spring compressor on to get this hat off here, which you're gonna reuse in our new spring. Look at the felt. It's all chewed up. They didn't do a good job there. Oh well. Let's put our new one together. We have new springs, new shocks. We need this hat. We have a new bearing, and we have a new floor rubber plate and a floor rubber plate up here. Spring compressor kit from Eastwood. Some people borrow these and rent them. I just purchase my tools. So what this is, it will compress the spring in order to fit it onto the strut. Now, this is the original strut we just pulled out of the car, and we need this metal hat up here, which we don't have on ours. We do have the new bearing hardware, we do have all the new rubber seals, and obviously a brand new spring. So we'll take the spring compressor, compress this so we can remove the hat, transfer it over there, compress that spring, and put it onto that Bilstein B6 strut. So that's the next thing that's on the list. But yeah, you definitely want to buy yourself your own spring compressor. This is an oxygen sensor socket kit. You put your ratchet in here, and then you can drop a hex key in here to the top of the shaft. Really useful. So I just found out this 22mm one will work. So otherwise you have to buy a specialized tool for the top of your McPherson struts. So why did we do that? At the top of the strut here, see this nut? Do you see there's a hex key in there? In order to turn this nut, you have to be able to hold that from spinning. And so you have to be able to drop a hex key in there and then put a wrench around the nut to tighten it down. So that's what we're gonna have to do, and we'll just do that and get this thing back onto the. We had to order a special socket for the strut because the oxygen sensor socket was too thick here in the ring and it wouldn't fit in the little gap that they gave us. It's 22mm, and the cutout they have in the socket allows you to drop a hex key in the center because the center of the strut has a hex socket, and we need to hold it while we turn this. It's a 1/2 inch socket, and it's from a company called Schwaben, which they make a lot of BMW tools. So it's a good quality one. You want it to be really thicker in here because most people, when they twist up here, they bend this socket here. So you want to make sure there's a lot of thick metal in here, which I think it has. So let's go try it. But yeah, unfortunately, the oxygen sensor socket didn't quite work. You can see it slides right there between the gap between the nut and the strut. The oxygen sensor socket is too thick. It wouldn't go through. Look, it just barely clears right there. So yeah, you need a special socket, unfortunately. But oh well, we'll continue on and take off the hi-hat from the other strut and put it into this one with the new spring. Should be good to go. So here's the spring compressor, and found out that this spring compressor here, with the jaws hooked here and here, will not compress the spring enough for me to get it off the strut. But I was watching Bavarian Auto, and they used the larger spring compressor head and actually compress from here, the plate, which comes off, to this spring here. So from here to here versus from the spring. So I'm going to try that. So what they did is they, in the box, they used a very large compressors. I used the medium one. There's the small, and they use the extra large. So I'm going to use the extra large and see what happens, because it just didn't work. So if you're in the same situation, try the extra large one. The difference now is we have the clamp right on the hi-hat there, right? Clamped in with that tab that's inside the spring compressor. We grab the last spring here. So now, hopefully, we'll be able to compress this enough to pull it off. The impact you're not supposed to, and I got it most of the way, so I'm going to use a ratchet to get the rest. But it looks like it's doing a good job. It's pulling away, as you see there, and we've got lots of travel left. So I think this was the best idea. As you can see here, it's loose now. So yeah, it works. Special socket has a cut in it, so you can put this hex key into the center and still be able to turn the nut out. Let me just... Oops. The boot out. The McPherson strut is now disassembled. So uncompress the spring, go from there. And there it's disassembled. And here's the new spring that we're trying to compress to make it fit. So that trick of compressing the hat there works good, very good. So there's actually an orientation that you have to do for the spring compressor. Do you see how there's a lip here with the jump with the, it goes like this here. So you want to catch the low end of your, so this part of the horn is lower than this part because the spring goes in a spiral. So you want the lower part to grab the top plate here and not on this bump here, and therefore this stays relatively flat. So you can then put the shock in and orient the bottom of the strut and then be able to screw this thing in. Wow, that took I think 15 different tries to get this orientation right. Anyway, yeah, so look for this bump. The low part of this is the low part of the hat here, and they should have enough room to put that in. All right, I don't know if you can see this, but here's the 22mm socket with a cut. There's an Allen key here, right? So since we shove it in here, okay, gonna put our Allen key in here, hold it with the Allen key, and then twist this, right? But the problem is, you see how at some point the half moon of the socket will hit the Allen key. There's a Schwabing kit where the Allen key goes to the center of the socket, and then there's a nut on the outside where there's a ratchet that can rotate it so you can still have an Allen key going down the center. That kit's $89. This thing here was $25, this socket. That kit comes with like, I think 5 or 6 different sockets. I think I'm going to order it because I have to do the other side of this car. And this is annoying as hell to do this. And there's a lot of thread to go down. So anyway, I'll spare you the gory details, but I'll probably be here for the next 10 minutes doing this. But I'm going to order that other kit. I recommend you do that if you try to do strut. It's called the Strut and McPherson Strut and something kit. It's $89, I think, at ECS Tuning. I'll go take a look at that. There you have it. Using the CompuTarget, but I think it's an M14 thread, so it's like 54 foot-pound. Like each measure of the diameter of the bolt or threaded rod has a torque rating in M14, which is 14mm, has 54 foot-pound. So just be careful if you're working on this. This is the top hat, and there's a bearing cover that goes under the bearing, and then there's this piece here that's convex on this side and flat on this side. You want the convex side up so the bearing can rub against it, and you do not want the flat side up like this. I reversed it on the driver's side, which is why it's not turning quite right, so I have to remove it and redo it. So, why the flat side? The flat side fits on top of the hat here, essentially to reinforce it. So, yeah. Anyway, just be careful. So we crank it with the hand to get the spring compressed, and then we use that toolkit to get the top hat on, and we should be good. And the final thing is we use the 1/2-inch torque wrench set of 47 foot-pound, and we have a crow's foot 21mm, which will fit that socket over here, like this, and we'll be able to torque it to spec. So we screw on these bolts here, and there's one back there. There's also a pin here, eh? So if you don't notice, the BMW top hat's aligned because there's a pin and there's obviously a screw underneath there. And then we go down here, you see the new Bilstein shock, all brand new spring, and into the knuckle. If you can see, there's a pinch bolt back there, right, with the torque to spec. But the passenger side is much easier than the driver's side. Driver's side has more sensors to take off. But yeah, I put the shock in first, and then I use this jack to move the knuckle into the strut versus putting the strut in first and then twisting it in, which you then probably will nick the edge of your paint here on your car. So we have the new Bilstein in. That's the new Bilstein. Sway bar nut. The leveler, this thing here. You have to take that off, or it bends that metal bracket back there that holds the leveler. We do all the brake wear sensor and then the ABS sensor. Change out these pinch bolts here. Got the new ones, which is the one that holds the clamp around the strut. Those are a little bit rusty, so I got these new ones. Now these are lock nuts. Now what makes them lock nuts is it looks like a normal nut. What they've done, they've squeezed the nut so that it's no longer a circle, it's actually an oval. And that bites into the metal, right, and makes it so it doesn't come loose very easily. I mean, you can probably torque it to what the specification for this diameter bolt is, but that keeps it from coming out. And so the problem with that is, if you use them once, you shouldn't use them again. You can, and people have, but I just bought new ones, and they're like, I don't know, $8 a piece, so like 16 bucks here. So I'm gonna do both sides and change these out. So I'm gonna take the wheel off, I'm gonna change this out. I'm also gonna change out the stabilizer bars that we painted white. So we'll do that next. I'm gonna use our CompuTorque set at 45 Newton meters to tighten up that pinch bolt. And there we go, 45. And then tighten that pinch bolt up right there. And that's it. And then up here, there are 3 bolts, and we should be good to go. If you're wondering, these are the stabilizer connectors for the front. The 2 long ones are for the front, and the 2 shorter ones are for the back. They came in a kind of a metallic stainless steel. That's because the car is white, and I thought it'd be kind of cool, so I sprayed them white. And then mounted them in. So those should look really nice. And that's what they look like with the paper taken off. Nice and white. So it looks pretty in here. So we're going to change out this thing here, which is the stabilizer bar. These are the bars. We sprayed them white because they look nice. And so we'll put those in. Okay. So we buzzed it out with the Milwaukee and a 17-inch wrench. So it's kind of a weird kind of a nut. So the sway bar link will come out now. The OEM BMW ones have this, they're like casted. And there's like striations in the castings. The new ones are basically solid shafts of, I think, stainless steel. So kind of corroded. Really loose, see that? So, what time these are replaced. So it's really, really loose. Here's a new one. It's painted white. Very, very stiff. Right, so let's mount these. It's good to carry a lot of tools. Need a pack of these. Need a T30 to get in to hold the spindle from spinning, so I can tighten up the bolt for the stabilizer bar. A ratchet is too big. Get yourself a good set of tools. We have to insert this into the center of this rod on that other side, and there's a nut there, and this thing keeps the nut from the shaft from spinning, so I can turn the nut. You might not be able to see it from here, but there's a nut actually on that side. Yeah, you can see it there. So we're going to take off the back wheel to replace with this. This is a stabilizer bar that we painted white. It goes back here like this. When we take the wheel off, you'll see it. If you're wondering, the bar is right here. If you see it, starts off there. It's attached down there. So let's see if we can get it off. And if you're wondering, getting that bolt down there is very difficult because there's an axle in the way, so you have to use a ratcheting wrench. It's taken forever. So you got the top piece of it off. We're gonna get the bottom piece out. Once it comes out, we'll be able to replace it. And there it is. There's the new stabilizer rod, torqued up here and also torqued up down there. Brought it to my favorite place, TrueLine, and get it aligned. These guys do a fantastic job of aligning. It's actually right across the street from Pho back. I might go over there and get some pho. All right. So super happy. They always align the car to be perfectly straight. So check out the videos on Wally Ho's Garage. There was a lot of work I did to replace all the suspension in this vehicle and all the driving knuckles and all.